the autumn dusk had a way of turning the mundane into something otherworldly. In the small town of Willowbrook, where every street corner held the gentle murmur of everyday life, an undercurrent of quiet mystery began to ripple through the cool, amber air. Neighbors exchanged knowing nods and hushed greetings, their voices a soft backdrop to the rustle of fallen leaves. Yet, beneath that veneer of ordinary comfort, something unusual stirred among the tombstones of the century-old cemetery at the edge of town. A stray dog, a wiry, half-starved creature with eyes like tarnished silver, had made the cemetery its home. Every evening, as the final rays of sunlight slanted across the cracked cobblestones, the dog would appear as if conjured from the shadows, its ragged coat catching the light in a way that made it seem almost spectral. But there was one grave the animal never left, the small, unassuming plot marked with a faded headstone bearing the name Lily. Lily had been a child, as the worn epitaph confirmed, and though decades had passed since her final day, the stray's unwavering vigil around her resting place sparked whispers of something inexplicable. At first, the sight of the dog lingering by Lily's grave evoked little more than pitiful sympathy. Neighbors mused that the creature must have formed a tender attachment to the tiny figure etched in memory. Yet, as days turned into weeks, the dog's behavior grew increasingly peculiar. It would sit for hours, unblinking, as though listening to voices that no one else could hear. Its eyes, dark and haunted, occasionally flickered with an intensity that suggested a deep-seated yearning, or perhaps a warning. In the warm, golden light of early evening, as Mrs. Evelyn Clark tended to her rose garden across the street, she would pause to watch the creature's silent vigil. "There's something not right," she'd murmur, half to herself, her voice trembling with a mixture of sorrow and apprehension. The scene had an unsettling quality, as if the boundary between the tangible world and an unseen realm was thinning. The stray silent communion with the grave seemed to hint at secrets buried not just in the earth, but in the very fabric of time. Meanwhile, in a modest, book-lined study at the town library, Jonathan Reeves, a reporter known for his instinct for uncovering the truth beneath everyday facades, had begun receiving anonymous tips. The dog, the messages read, guards more than a grave. There's something beneath it. At first, Jonathan had dismissed these messages as the ramblings of a troubled mind, but the intensity of his curiosity grew with every additional note. Determined to find the truth, he began his investigation by visiting the cemetery at twilight. The cemetery itself was a tableau of quiet decay. Old stone markers, worn by time and weathered by countless seasons, jutted out of the ground like forgotten memories. A faint mist clung to the air, diffusing the light in eerie halos around each monument. Jonathan's footsteps were muffled by the soft carpet of fallen leaves as he approached Lily's grave, his heart beating a steady rhythm of anticipation and dread. The dog was there, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the tiny stone, its posture both alert and strangely resigned. As Jonathan crouched by the grave, he noticed the intricate carvings on the headstone, a delicate lattice of vines and blossoms that now seemed more like cryptic symbols than simple decoration. The inscription was nearly illegible, the letters worn away by time and neglect. Yet, beneath the child's name and a date that marked a life cut tragically short, there was something else, a series of faint, almost imperceptible scratches that spiraled down the stone like a secret code. Jonathan's mind raced with possibilities. Had someone, or something, tried to send a message from beyond? In that moment, the silence was broken by the dog's sudden movement. It trotted around the grave, its movements deliberate and cautious, as if performing a ritual known only to itself. Its gaze flickered toward a clump of ivy that curled along the edge of the stone wall behind the grave. Jonathan's pulse quickened. There was a disturbance there, a slight shift in the ivy's arrangement, as though it concealed an opening. He brushed aside the leaves and, with trembling fingers, felt a cool draft that whispered of hidden depths. The discovery was subtle at first, a narrow gap in the stone wall, a seam that had gone unnoticed by generations of caretakers. It was as if the grave itself was not merely a resting place for a departed soul, but a gateway to something else, something that defied rational explanation. Jonathan's journalistic instincts warred with an ancient, primal fear. His mind conjured images of secret tunnels and long-forgotten catacombs, of histories so dark they had been deliberately buried. Yet, despite the rational part of him that insisted on a logical explanation, the raw, visceral dread that gripped his heart would not be dismissed. As twilight deepened into night, the cemetery transformed under the influence of flickering lamplight and the occasional cry of an owl. Shadows grew long and twisting, merging into shapes that seemed to breathe and shift with a life of their own. The stray dog, its vigil unbroken, circled the grave with an almost ritualistic precision, its ears pricked for every sound. In that charged atmosphere, the boundary between the seen and the unseen dissolved, leaving Jonathan with a gnawing sense that he was on the brink of a revelation too profound for ordinary minds. In the ensuing days, rumors began to swirl through Willowbrook. Whispers of supernatural happenings, of voices echoing in the dead of night, and of the stray dog's unyielding presence at the cemetery became the fodder for both local gossip and the dark corners of internet forums. Some claimed that Lily's spirit lingered near her grave, tethered to the world by a bond with the spectral animal. Others speculated that the site was cursed, that beneath the grave lay a relic or a secret that could unravel the town's very history. Amid these rumors, the initial shock of the discovery morphed into a deep-seated unease that spread like a chill through the community. Jonathan, driven by a blend of professional curiosity and personal trepidation, returned to the cemetery night after night. Each visit revealed new details, a slight shift in the stone, an inscription that seemed to change under the caress of moonlight, or the dog's sudden, almost human-like gaze. He began documenting his observations in meticulous detail, his notes filled with poetic descriptions that belied the horror he felt. The mundane world around him, the clink of a bicycle bell on Main Street, the familiar chatter in the local diner, seemed to recede, replaced by an overwhelming sense that something profound and unsettling was at work. One particularly crisp evening, when the moon hung low and swollen in the sky like a secret half-revealed smile, Jonathan noticed something he hadn't seen before. As he traced the outline of the hidden gap behind the ivy, his fingertips brushed against a small, irregular stone embedded in the wall. It was unlike any marker he had encountered in the cemetery, a dark, almost obsidian-like rock that pulsed faintly under his touch, as though it possessed a heartbeat of its own. The air around him seemed to thicken, and the silence became oppressive, filled with unspoken promises and latent dangers. Jonathan's thoughts swirled like the autumn leaves at his feet. Was this stone a natural occurrence, or had it been deliberately placed there as part of a ritual? The idea of a ritual, of some arcane practice linking the living to the dead, sent shivers down his spine. He recalled the old legends whispered by the town's elders, stories of forbidden rites and secret societies that had once dabbled in the occult, leaving behind markers and symbols as reminders of their dark pursuits. The stray dog's unyielding focus on Lily's grave now took on a new significance. Perhaps it was not mere loyalty or chance, but a silent guardian meant to protect, or warn, against the resurgence of a long-dormant evil. As the night deepened and the chill of the approaching winter seeped into every corner of the cemetery, Jonathan carefully pried the stone loose. With each small movement, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the very earth were reluctant to let go of its secret. When the stone finally came free, it revealed a narrow crevice behind it, a hidden passage that descended into darkness. The passage was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, its walls rough and unyielding, exuding a damp, earthy smell mixed with something ancient and indefinable. In that moment, Jonathan felt an irresistible pull, a compulsion to explore the depths of this clandestine corridor and uncover the truth hidden beneath the grave. The stray dog, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, stepped aside and allowed him passage, its eyes gleaming with a mix of warning and determination. With a deep, steadying breath, Jonathan crossed the threshold, leaving behind the familiar world of Willowbrook and entering a realm where every step echoed with the weight of forgotten history and unspoken dread. The passageway was narrow and disorienting, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Jonathan's only guide was the faint beam of his flashlight, which revealed ancient carvings etched into the stone walls. These carvings were a jumbled tapestry of symbols, some resembling celestial maps, others invoking archaic sigils that spoke of sacrifice and rebirth. His mind raced to interpret them, but the meaning remained elusive, lost in the mists of time and the murmur of an age long past. The air was cool and thick with moisture, and every so often, a drip of water would punctuate the silence, each sound a small, relentless reminder of the passage of time. As he pressed deeper into the hidden corridor, a growing sense of foreboding settled over him. It was as though the passage itself was alive, its walls whispering secrets in a language only the brave, or the doomed, could comprehend. The beam of light danced across the carvings, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and contorted with each step he took. In one particularly striking panel, a figure that resembled a weeping child was depicted in exquisite detail, its eyes wide with terror, a haunting mirror of the sorrow that had once enveloped Lily's short life. Jonathan paused, his breath catching in his throat as he tried to reconcile the imagery with the present moment, feeling a kinship with both the child in the carving and the one who lay in eternal rest above. The further he advanced, the more palpable the tension became. Every footfall echoed in a silent symphony of uncertainty, each sound magnified in the cavernous space. He began to wonder if some ancient guardian, perhaps the spirit of Lily herself, watched over this subterranean sanctum, a silent sentinel to secrets too dangerous to be unearthed by the living. His mind teetered on the edge of rational thought and feverish imagination, the line between reality and nightmare blurring with every heartbeat. At length, the narrow corridor opened into a small chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness and its walls lined with an assortment of crumbling relics. Among the detritus of time, Jonathan's flashlight revealed fragments of pottery, rusted metal, and faded, tattered cloth. In the center of the chamber lay an altar-like structure, its surface covered with a thin layer of dust and a scattering of small, glimmering objects that resembled shards of glass or perhaps tiny bones. The sight sent a jolt through him, a visceral reminder that what he had stumbled upon was not a mere relic of the past, but a repository of memories steeped in mystery and sorrow. He approached the altar slowly, each step measured as though he were walking on the fragile edge of a precipice. His heart pounded in his chest, a relentless drumbeat that matched the rhythm of his increasingly turbulent thoughts. What purpose did this chamber serve? Was it a place of worship, a shrine to a forgotten deity, or something far more sinister, a tomb of secrets that should have remained forever sealed? The question swirled in his mind, echoing in the silent darkness like ghostly refrains. As Jonathan knelt by the altar, his hand brushed against one of the small objects, and he recoiled at the touch. It was cool and unnaturally smooth, its surface inscribed with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with a hidden light. In that moment, he felt as if he had awakened something dormant, a presence that had been waiting, patiently and silently, for an interloper to disturb its rest. The stray dog's distant bark echoed faintly through the corridor, a reminder of the world he had left behind and the peril that now loomed before him. A sudden gust of cold wind swept through the chamber, though no open window or door could be seen. The movement stirred the dust, setting it afloat in a swirling, ghostly dance. Shadows deepened and merged, and for an instant, Jonathan swore he heard a soft, indistinct whisper, as though voices from the past were murmuring secrets in a language beyond human ken. His skin prickled with an overwhelming sense of dread and awe, a primal reaction to the unknown forces that had converged in this hidden place. In that breathless moment, as the whispers faded and the chill receded, Jonathan realized that his journey had only just begun. The relics, the carvings, and the strange altar all hinted at a legacy of darkness intertwined with the fate of Lily, the child whose grave had drawn the stray dog's unwavering devotion. With his mind awash in a tumult of questions and emotions, he resolved to delve deeper into the mystery, to follow the trail of cryptic clues that promised revelations as staggering as they were terrifying. Outside, the night in Willowbrook pressed on relentlessly. The stray dog, its eyes now reflecting the pale glimmer of distant stars, paced the perimeter of the cemetery with an unspoken urgency. The familiar sounds of the town, the soft murmur of late-night conversations, the distant hum of a car engine, seemed a world away from the eerie stillness that reigned beneath the grave. In every whispered gust of wind and every rustle of dry leaves, there was a sense that something was awakening, a hidden truth that threatened to shatter the delicate veil between the ordinary and the unthinkable. Jonathan's heart, though heavy with the burden of what he had discovered, beat with a fierce determination. He knew that the answers he sought lay not only in the forgotten corridors beneath Lily's grave, but also in the stories that the townspeople had long kept hidden behind polite smiles and measured silences. The revelations promised to be as unsettling as they were illuminating, capable of altering the fabric of Willowbrook's history forever. As he lingered in the chamber, contemplating his next move, a sudden realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. In one corner of the chamber, partially obscured by layers of dust and time, was a narrow, almost imperceptible seam in the wall, a fissure that hinted at a passage leading further into the unknown. The sight of it sent a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins, mingling with the dread that clutched at his soul. With a trembling hand, he reached for his flashlight and directed its beam toward the gap. The light revealed a tunnel, its entrance shrouded in darkness and mystery, beckoning him with the promise of deeper secrets yet to be unraveled. For a long, agonizing moment, Jonathan stood at the threshold, his mind a battleground of conflicting impulses, one urging him to retreat to the safety of the known world above, the other compelling him to venture forth into the murk of ancient enigma. The stray dog's distant presence, almost as if it were waiting for him to make a choice, lent the moment an uncanny gravity. In that breathless pause, the entire universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his decision. With resolve hardening in his chest, he stepped toward the tunnel, each footfall echoing the pulse of destiny. The narrow passage swallowed him whole, and the light of his flashlight wavered as if in deference to the darkness that lay ahead. The air grew colder still, and the walls closed in with the weight of countless untold stories. Every step took him further from the safety of Willowbrook, and yet, with each heartbeat, he felt drawn inexorably toward an answer that had eluded him for so long, a truth buried beneath layers of time, pain, and forgotten memory. In that moment, as the tunnel stretched out before him like an endless ribbon of shadow and light, Jonathan knew that his life would never be the same. He was no longer just a curious reporter, he had become a reluctant explorer of a realm where the boundaries between life and death, sanity and madness, reality and nightmare, blurred into a haunting tapestry of secrets. And somewhere, deep within the labyrinth of stone and shadow, the echo of a child's laughter, both innocent and eerily mournful, seemed to whisper of promises and perils beyond measure. The tunnel swallowed his words and his doubts alike, leaving him to confront the silence of a world that had long forgotten the warmth of the sun. As he advanced further, the oppressive darkness seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of an ancient and indifferent force. Every detail, the rough texture of the walls, the scent of damp earth, the almost musical drip of water, conspired to remind him that he was venturing into a place where time itself had lost meaning. And yet, amid the dread and uncertainty, there was a strange allure, a call to uncover the hidden narrative of a child, a stray dog, and a secret too vast for ordinary understanding. The past and present converged in that subterranean corridor, and Jonathan could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, urging him to remember that every stone, every whisper in the dark, held a story. He clutched the small, mysterious shard from the altar in his pocket, a token of the unknown, and pressed on, his steps determined yet trembling. In the depths of the tunnel, where the only sound was the steady beat of his own heart, he sensed that the real story was just beginning to unfold. And so, with the stray dog's silent vigil echoing in the distance and the promise of ancient secrets lingering in the chill air, Jonathan disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind the world of familiar lights and everyday comforts. What lay ahead was a realm of raw, unfiltered history, a mosaic of pain, wonder, and unspeakable mystery that would forever alter the lives of those who dared to confront it. The tunnel's oppressive silence seemed to swallow him as he walked deeper into its bowels, and every step was a descent into realms of emotion and memory that defied simple explanation. There was an unsettling beauty in the interplay of light and shadow, a delicate dance that hinted at both creation and destruction. In the interplay of these elemental forces, Jonathan could sense the faint outlines of a narrative woven through centuries, a narrative that would soon demand to be told, no matter the cost to those who dared listen. As his eyes adjusted to the murky gloom, he began to notice more details along the tunnel walls, faint inscriptions that appeared to be written in a language lost to modern tongues, and symbols that evoked both awe and dread. They told silent stories of rites performed under blood-red moons, of sacrifices made to appease forces beyond human ken, and of promises sealed in the twilight between life and death. Each symbol, each faded letter, seemed to pulse with a latent energy, a reminder that history was not confined to the pages of books but lived and breathed in every crevice of the earth. Jonathan's mind raced as he pondered the implications. The stray dog's unyielding loyalty to Lily's grave, the mysterious shard, the hidden passage, all of it formed a puzzle that challenged everything he thought he knew about the town's history and its whispered legends. In the stillness of the tunnel, as if summoned by his thoughts, a low, almost imperceptible hum began to resonate from the walls themselves. It was a sound that defied description, a mixture of wind, distant voices, and the rhythmic beating of an ancient drum, urging him forward into the unknown. Every moment in that oppressive darkness deepened the contrast between the innocent memories of a child's life and the macabre secrets that lay beneath her final resting place. Jonathan felt as if he were treading on the fragile boundary between two worlds, one where the light of day brought the warmth of routine, and the other where the shadows whispered of long-forgotten sorrows and unspeakable rituals. The tunnel was a threshold, a passage not just in space, but in time, and with every step he took, he sensed that the true heart of the mystery was waiting to be revealed. A sudden, distant sound, a metallic scrape, perhaps the shifting of ancient stone, startled him, and for a moment, the oppressive silence was broken by the echo of that solitary noise. It was a reminder that even in the depths of this clandestine passage, he was not alone. The stray dog's presence, though unseen in the immediate darkness, lingered like a guardian spirit, its silent vigilance a testament to the interconnected fates of the living and the dead. In that charged atmosphere, Jonathan pressed on, driven by a compulsion that mingled dread and an insatiable curiosity. The weight of centuries bore down on him, each step laden with the promise of revelations that would challenge the boundaries of understanding. The tunnel seemed endless, yet with every labored step, he felt closer to a truth that had been buried deep within the earth and within the collective memory of Willowbrook. And so, in the cold embrace of the underground corridor, as ancient symbols flickered in the trembling light and the distant murmur of forgotten voices swirled around him, Jonathan's journey into the heart of mystery had only just begun. The secret that lay beneath the child's grave was a tapestry of sorrow and wonder, a story that demanded to be heard, a story that, once unraveled, would shatter the fragile illusion of normalcy that had long sheltered the town above. In that moment of profound transition, as the darkness deepened and the whispers grew louder, Jonathan could not shake the feeling that he was not merely uncovering a secret, but awakening a force that had lain dormant for far too long. Every beat of his heart echoed the inevitability of discovery, and every shadow seemed to pulse with a silent promise of both peril and revelation. With the memory of a child's laughter, tender yet tinged with melancholy, resonating in his mind, he moved forward, unaware that the true cost of unearthing the past would soon begin to weigh upon him, as inexorable and as relentless as the march of time. The tunnel swallowed his resolve and his fears alike, and as he stepped into the unknown, the world above continued its quiet, unsuspecting existence. Willowbrook, with its quaint streets and gentle rhythms, remained blissfully unaware that beneath its soil, secrets of an unfathomable nature were stirring, secrets that would soon spill into the light, leaving no heart untouched by their haunting legacy. Jonathan's footsteps echoed as he left the chamber behind, venturing once more into the twisting maze of underground passageways. The corridor seemed to pulse with the quiet rhythm of an ancient heartbeat, a slow, steady thrum that resonated in the very marrow of the stone. Every step drew him deeper into a realm where time and memory melded into one, and the line between the living and the spectral blurred into an indistinguishable haze. The tunnel narrowed again, its walls slick with moisture and covered in a mosaic of cryptic symbols that glowed faintly in the wavering beam of his flashlight. With each step, the air grew colder, more oppressive, as though the earth itself were exhaling long-forgotten secrets. The stray dog trotted ahead silently, its paws making soft, deliberate impressions in the damp soil. Its eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to promise guidance and protection in a place where no human light could reach. In the dim glow, Jonathan noticed that the carvings on the walls had grown increasingly elaborate. Ancient sigils and spiraling glyphs intertwined in a delicate dance, their patterns reminiscent of star maps and celestial alignments. They evoked images of rituals held under blood-red moons and the fervent devotion of souls long past. He paused before one such carving, a labyrinthine design that appeared to shift when viewed from different angles. For a moment, he felt as if it were a living puzzle, inviting him to unravel its mystery. A low, resonant murmur soon began to fill the tunnel, a sound that seemed less like noise and more like a language, an archaic hymn that vibrated in tune with the rhythmic beating of his heart. Jonathan strained to listen, catching fleeting syllables that hinted at an ancient invocation. The The sound stirred a mix of awe and unease within him, each note carrying the weight of a legacy that had been buried deep within the earth. As he pressed on, the passage opened into a larger cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows that danced with the flicker of his light. The walls here were adorned with murals so intricate they seemed almost alive. Depicting ethereal scenes of celestial ceremonies, the murals portrayed spectral figures engaged in rites both beautiful and terrifying. In one particularly striking tableau, a child with gentle, sorrowful eyes stood at the center, encircled by guardians in flowing robes. The child's image evoked a tender melancholy, a visage that mirrored Lily's own story, a fragile life extinguished too soon, yet preserved in memory through whispered legends. In the center of the cavern, a raised stone dais commanded attention. Its surface was scarred by time, yet embedded within it lay countless symbols that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Here, the stray dog stopped abruptly, its gaze fixed on the dais as though it recognized an old friend. Jonathan felt a tremor of connection, an inexplicable link between the child's image in the mural, the spectral guardian at the dais, and the mournful vigil of the dog. It was as if the threads of fate had woven these disparate elements into a single, inextricable tapestry of mystery. Drawn by the pull of that silent summons, Jonathan approached the dais. With each measured step, the ambient murmur of the cavern grew louder, until it seemed to fill every crevice of the vast space. He could almost see faint, ghostly figures flitting at the periphery of his vision, shadows of those who had once stood where he now walked, their presence a silent chorus echoing from the depths of time. The experience was both mesmerizing and disconcerting. Here, in this hidden sanctuary of the past, the barrier between memory and reality was perilously thin. On the dais lay an object that immediately seized Jonathan's attention, a circular disc of stone, roughly the size of a dinner plate, carved with concentric circles and mysterious runes. Its surface was cool and unnervingly smooth to the touch. The disc exuded an aura of quiet power, and as he examined it, Jonathan sensed that it was a relic, an artifact of rituals performed long ago, perhaps even the catalyst for the events he had unwittingly set in motion. The runes on the disc pulsed subtly, as though they were alive with a silent incantation, echoing the murmur of the cavern. Feeling a compulsion he could neither ignore nor fully understand, Jonathan gently picked up the disc. In that moment, a sudden rush of wind swept through the cavern, stirring the murals and causing the shadows to writhe like living things. The stray dog let out a soft, almost mournful bark, a sound that resonated deeply in the silence, as if it were a signal heralding a transformative event. Jonathan clutched the disc tightly, its weight both physical and symbolic, as he contemplated the sudden, powerful surge of energy that coursed through the space. The cavern trembled subtly beneath his feet. A low, resonating hum filled the air, and the temperature dropped further, as though the very elements were conspiring to reveal a hidden truth. The murals on the walls seemed to come alive under this new influence, their depictions shifting imperceptibly before his eyes. In one fleeting moment, the face of the child in the mural, the one that so painfully echoed Lily's innocence, appeared to blink, as if acknowledging his presence. Jonathan's pulse raced. He felt the fragile boundary between the past and the present dissolve, merging into a singular, charged instant. Then, as quickly as the sensation came, it subsided, leaving behind a heavy silence that pressed upon him with an almost tangible force. The stray dog stepped forward once more, its eyes fixed on a narrow passage that branched off from the cavern's far end. The passage was shrouded in darkness, its contours barely distinguishable from the surrounding stone, yet it exuded a magnetic allure. Without a word, the dog beckoned him onward, as if it held the key to the next chapter of this unfolding mystery. With the relic secure in his grasp and the dog by his side, Jonathan advanced into the narrow passage. The corridor was claustrophobic, its walls closing in as the feeble beam of his flashlight struggled to cut through the oppressive gloom. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, a stark reminder of the countless years that had passed since these stones had witnessed life's most fervent moments. Each step was measured and cautious, the silence here was absolute, punctuated only by the occasional drip of water and the soft, steady presence of the dog. In this suffocating darkness, Jonathan's thoughts churned with questions that seemed to multiply with every heartbeat. Who had created these relics and symbols, and for what purpose? What ancient covenant was inscribed in the very bones of this underground world? And most hauntingly, how did Lily, the innocent child whose grave had ignited this spectral vigil, fit into this intricate puzzle? The deeper he ventured, the more he sensed that his own destiny was now intertwined with a legacy of sorrow and mystery far beyond his understanding. The passage eventually widened into another small chamber, even more secluded than the one he had left behind. Here, the floor was littered with fragments of pottery, shattered remnants of what might once have been sacred vessels. Faded frescoes, their colors muted by time, clung to the walls, depicting scenes of solemn ceremonies and silent supplications to forces unseen. In the center of this chamber, an ancient stone basin stood, its surface carved with a series of symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. The basin seemed to invite a ritual of remembrance, a cleansing, perhaps, of the sins and secrets that had long festered beneath the surface of everyday life. Jonathan knelt before the basin, running his fingers over the cool, smooth stone. The symbols etched into its surface felt both foreign and intimately familiar, as though they were fragments of a language his soul had once known. The air around him seemed to pulse with latent energy, and for a moment, he could almost discern the murmur of a chant, a ritualistic hymn meant to invoke the guardians of the past. His heart pounded in his ears as he considered the possibility that the basin was a relic of an ancient rite, a means of bridging the divide between the mortal realm and the ethereal world of spirits. A sudden, soft rustle behind him drew Jonathan's attention. He turned sharply, the beam of his flashlight revealing only the swirling dust and the faint outline of the passage from which he had come. Yet, in that fleeting moment, he felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched, a presence that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. The stray dog growled lowly, its hackles raised in silent warning. Jonathan's pulse quickened as he strained his ears, catching the subtle sound of a footstep that did not belong to either him or the dog. It was as if the very walls were alive, shifting and murmuring secrets that had been sealed away for generations. Instinct and trepidation warred within him, but his resolve held firm. The journey had already revealed truths that defied explanation, and he could not turn back now, not when so much lay at the threshold of revelation. Clutching the relic and the fragile bundle of ancient writings he had gathered earlier, Jonathan stood and moved slowly toward the shadowed corridor beyond the basin. Each step was heavy with the burden of the unknown, yet also imbued with a sense of destiny that beckoned him forward. The stray dog padded silently at his side, its presence a steadfast reminder that he was not entirely alone in this forsaken labyrinth. Together, they passed through narrow archways and descending steps, the architecture of the passage becoming increasingly ornate with carvings of mythic creatures and celestial motifs. The interplay of light and shadow along the walls cast an almost surreal quality upon the path, a chiaroscuro of ancient memory and impending revelation that stirred the deepest recesses of Jonathan's soul. As he moved deeper, the corridor began to resemble a ritual pathway, its very design a symbolic representation of a journey from the mundane into the sacred unknown. The symbols on the walls grew bolder, their lines converging to form a path that led toward an illuminated alcove at the corridor's end. In that alcove, suspended in the center of a circular chamber, was a crystalline structure that radiated a soft, pulsating light. It was as if the crystal contained within it the distilled essence of countless lost voices, a repository of memory and sorrow that shimmered with both hope and despair. Standing before the crystalline structure, Jonathan felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, a profound mixture of wonder, terror, and a heartbreaking sense of longing. He reached out, his hand trembling as he hesitated a fraction of a second before touching its cool, smooth surface. The moment his skin made contact, the crystal flared with a blinding radiance that enveloped him in its ethereal glow. In that dazzling burst of light, visions flashed before his eyes, glimpses of a time when the world was young, of ceremonies held under a canopy of stars, and of a little girl whose laughter had once filled the air with innocence and joy. Yet, intermingled with these tender memories were darker images, a ritual of blood and sacrifice, shadows consuming light, and the anguished cries of those who had been lost to a power beyond mortal comprehension. The overwhelming cascade of images left Jonathan breathless, his mind reeling with the magnitude of the secret that was now unfolding before him. The stray dog whined softly at his feet, its eyes reflecting the same myriad emotions, a blend of sorrow and solemn understanding. In that luminous moment, Jonathan comprehended that the crystalline structure was a nexus, a focal point where the past and the present converged, and where the hidden covenant of this subterranean world was recorded in the language of light and memory. As the brilliance gradually subsided, the crystal's glow softened into a gentle pulse, as if beckoning him to embrace the legacy it held. Jonathan sank to his knees, overcome by the immensity of what he had witnessed. The visions had unlocked a door deep within him, stirring memories of loss, hope, and a destiny that stretched far beyond his solitary existence. The realization was profound and unyielding. The secrets of this underground world were not merely relics of a forgotten era but living, breathing forces that continued to shape the fabric of reality in Willowbrook. With a renewed sense of purpose, Jonathan rose, his resolve hardened by the knowledge that he had been chosen to bear witness to these ancient truths. The crystalline nexus pulsed softly in silent communion with his racing heart, as if affirming the sacred duty that now lay before him. The stray dog remained at his side, a constant guardian in this realm of shifting shadows and echoing memories. Stepping away from the alcove, Jonathan retraced his path through the winding corridor, each step resonating with the promise of more revelations and with the lingering echo of a child's long-forgotten laughter. The journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The relics, the inscriptions, and the spectral visions were all pieces of a larger, unfolding narrative that would eventually shake the very foundations of Willowbrook and challenge the delicate balance between light and darkness. In the profound silence of the underground maze, where every stone held a story and every whisper carried the weight of the past, Jonathan continued onward, driven by the unyielding desire to uncover the truth behind Lily's grave, the stray dog's vigil, and the mysterious covenant that bound them together. And as he stepped deeper into the embrace of the subterranean labyrinth, he knew with every fiber of his being that the legacy of sorrow and wonder would soon reveal itself in full, reshaping not only his destiny but the fate of an entire town. Jonathan emerged from the narrow confines of the crystalline alcove into a vast subterranean hall that felt as though it existed between worlds. The air here was thick with the weight of centuries, punctuated by the sporadic drip of water echoing off towering stone walls. Grand arches, carved with intricate patterns that shimmered in the faint light of bioluminescent fungi, spanned the distance like the vaults of an ancient cathedral. At the heart of the hall loomed a monumental structure, a weathered sarcophagus adorned with elaborate reliefs depicting scenes of joy intertwined with unspeakable sorrow. Approaching the sarcophagus, Jonathan's steps were measured and hesitant, as if each footfall carried him deeper into a realm where the living were unwelcome. The reliefs told a story of a child, a figure blessed and cursed in equal measure, whose tender visage bore a striking resemblance to Lily. Wide, sorrowful eyes and a crown of entwined vine seemed to cry out a silent lament. Jonathan's hand trembled as he pressed against the cold, rough stone. In that touch, he sensed a faint pulse of energy, a heartbeat not his own, but that of something ageless and ineffable. At his feet, the stray dog sat vigil, its luminous eyes reflecting the timeless carvings. There was a wordless urgency in the creature's gaze, a plea to honor the secrets enshrined in that stone tomb. In the dim light, Jonathan thought he heard the faint strains of a lullaby, a melody of innocence lost and hopes unfulfilled, as if a child's voice was desperately trying to break free from the clutches of time. Then, as if stirred by his presence, a soft, measured tapping, like the delicate patter of a tiny hand, resonated against the stone. Jonathan spun around, his flashlight cutting through the murk. For an agonizing heartbeat, a small, spectral figure stood at the edge of the hall, shrouded in shifting shadows. The fleeting image of a child, barely more than a whisper in the dark, seared itself into his memory, a poignant reminder of the fragile boundary between life and the afterlife. Compelled by a force he could neither name nor resist, Jonathan reached out and pressed his hand against a section of the sarcophagus where the carvings had fused into what appeared to be a protective seal. With a slow, grinding sound that reverberated through the hall, the stone shifted, unveiling a narrow opening aglow with an otherworldly light. Within the crevice, dancing cymbals pulsed softly, a rhythm that seemed to mimic the beat of an ancient, slumbering heart. A surge of adrenaline mixed with dread coursed through him. The opening beckoned, hinting at secrets that could unravel the dark tapestry woven through Lily's tragic fate. His mind raced with questions. What ancient covenant bound this innocent child to a destiny so steeped in sorrow? Had Lily's spirit, or something far older, orchestrated the stray dog's unyielding vigil? The relic of mystery demanded to be understood, even as it warned of consequences best left undisturbed. In that suspended moment, with the spectral glow washing over his face, Jonathan felt the gravity of destiny settle upon his shoulders. His fingers hovered near the threshold of the revealed passage. The stray dog, ever the silent guardian, seemed to murmur without sound, "Do not fear the dark. The path of truth is lined with shadows, yet it is the only way to honor those we have lost." Resolutely, Jonathan stepped forward. The world of Willowbrook, the comforting facade of everyday life, vanished behind him as he entered the narrow passage. The corridor was a sinuous tunnel lined with layers of archaic inscriptions and frescoes that chronicled lost eras of mysticism and ritual. The air was cool and redolent of incense mixed with damp earth, the haunting reminder of ceremonies long past. As he advanced, his flashlight revealed murals that defied simple explanation. One alcove featured a circle of hooded figures in solemn ritual around a central, luminous child. The scene evoked both reverence and a deep, ineffable sorrow that resonated within him. With every cautious step, Jonathan felt the boundary between memory and prophecy dissolve. Faint whispers, too soft to be called voices, emanated from the very walls, their cadence speaking of forgotten promises, ancient grief, and the eternal interplay between light and darkness. The stray dog padded quietly at his side, its every movement a silent pledge of loyalty and a reminder that he was not alone in this realm of hidden histories. Time itself became an abstract concept in the labyrinth of stone and shadow. The rhythmic drip of water, the subtle hum of the inscriptions, and even the sound of his own heartbeat merged into a symphony of the past. At intervals, he paused to decipher a particularly intricate carving, a spiral motif that seemed to draw the eye into an endless vortex, symbolizing the cyclical nature of existence and the eternal return of life's enigmas. Eventually, the winding passage led him into a vast antechamber, its ceiling swallowed by darkness. Dominating the center of this room was a weathered stone pedestal on which rested a leather-bound tome. Bound in a material disturbingly reminiscent of human skin, the tome's yellowed pages were inscribed with cryptic symbols and illustrations that spoke of forbidden rites and secret pacts. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat as he realized that this grimoire was not a mere relic, it was a repository of esoteric knowledge, passed down through clandestine societies and hidden orders. Approaching the pedestal with reverence, Jonathan's hand hovered above the ancient book. The stray dog sat attentively at his side, its posture as if urging him to proceed with caution. The chamber pulsed with an aura of solemnity, each stone an inscription bearing witness to long-forgotten sacrifices made in the name of powers that defied mortal comprehension. In that charged silence, the tome seemed to come alive. A low, almost imperceptible hum radiated from its pages, harmonizing with the deep, resonant beats of the chamber. The embossed title, rendered in an elegantly menacing calligraphy, evoked both hope and despair. Though its words eluded his understanding, the presence of the tome conveyed a singular message. Within these pages lay the entwined fates of Lily, the spectral guardians, and the ancient forces that had long shaped the destiny of Willowbrook. With a mix of awe and trepidation, Jonathan gently opened the grimoire. Fragile pages unfurled before him, revealing intricate illustrations of rituals and transformations, depictions of a child enveloped by ethereal figures, cosmic symbols interlaced with visions of celestial realms and abyssal landscapes. As he traced the faded lines of the illustrations with trembling fingers, he sensed the book speaking directly to him, sharing fragments of a legacy that spanned millennia. A profound sadness mingled with an insatiable curiosity within his soul. Every symbol, every delicately inscribed word, whispered of a legacy inscribed in the very fabric of the earth, a legacy where the memory of a lost child was intertwined with a covenant as old as time. It became increasingly clear that Lily's spirit had not been laid to rest in oblivion, but had instead been woven into the tapestry of ancient rites, a bridge between the living and the unseen. As the words of the grimoire sank into his mind, the chamber seemed to shudder with a renewed energy. Shadows stirred, and in a fleeting, heart-stopping instant, the spectral image of a little girl materialized before him. Ethereal and delicate, she appeared as though sculpted from mist and moonlight, her wide eyes a mirror of both innocent wonder and profound melancholy. For a moment, their gazes locked in a silent communion, a bittersweet exchange that conveyed the immense weight of loss and the inexorable pull of destiny. Almost as quickly as she had appeared, the vision dissipated, leaving behind a lingering echo of her laughter, a sound that was as pure as it was heart-rending. The stray dog whimpered softly, its eyes fixed on the spot where the apparition had vanished. Jonathan, his heart pounding with a tumult of terror and resolve, closed the tome gently as though sealing away a fragment of the past while simultaneously unlocking a doorway to further revelations. In the ensuing silence, the chamber seemed to breathe a slow, deliberate inhalation that spoke of eternal cycles of renewal and decay. Rising with newfound determination, Jonathan cradled the grimoire as he retraced his steps back into the labyrinth. The corridors, once mere passages of stone and shadow, now revealed themselves as sacred pathways, each inscription a verse in an epic poem of love, loss, and the inexorable march of fate. Every whisper and every flicker of light urged him onward, deeper into a mystery that was as profound as it was perilous. Outside, the unsuspecting world of Willowbrook continued its quiet existence, oblivious to the ancient forces stirring beneath its surface. Yet in the hidden corridors, the legacy of Lily, the steadfast devotion of a spectral guardian, and the secret wisdom of the grimoire were intertwining, reshaping destinies with every cautious step Jonathan took. With the grimoire secured and the stray dog ever watchful at his side, Jonathan advanced into the next winding passage, a narrow, sinuous corridor that promised further revelations. The walls, alive with cryptic symbols and frescoes of long-forgotten ceremonies, seemed to murmur secrets of rituals performed under blood-red moons and of sacrifices made in the name of powers beyond mortal ken. The interplay of light and shadow along the rough stone conjured an almost tangible sense of both dread and hope, as if the corridor itself were a living testament to the eternal dance between creation and oblivion. Every step deepened his understanding that his journey was not solely an excavation of hidden relics, but also a pilgrimage into the innermost chambers of his own soul. Here, in the oppressive darkness of ancient memory, he began to realize that the true mystery lay not only in the secrets of the past, but in the fragile human heart, its capacity to endure, to remember, and ultimately to transform sorrow into a beacon of truth. And so, with the faint echoes of a child's laughter and the solemn presence of the stray dog guiding him, Jonathan moved forward into the unknown. The path ahead, shrouded in mystery and fraught with peril, beckoned him onward, a journey that promised to reveal the intertwining fates of a lost child, forgotten rites, and the eternal covenant that bound them all. Jonathan's steps led him into a chamber that felt less like a room and more like a sanctified oubliette, where every surface seemed imbued with the resonance of long-forgotten oaths. The walls, now alive with pulsing inscriptions and subtle, shifting murals, narrated an ancient saga, a chronicle of sacrifice and renewal that spanned centuries. The faint luminescence from clusters of bioluminescent fungi and the soft, eerie glow of his pendant combined to create an otherworldly tapestry of light and shadow. Each symbol and carving exuded an air of solemnity, as if the very stone were a silent guardian of secrets too profound for daylight. In one corner of the chamber, Jonathan's gaze was drawn to a massive mural depicting a ritual in progress. Hooded figures encircled a central figure, a child whose likeness bore an uncanny resemblance to Lily. The mural's vibrant hues, though faded by the ravages of time, suggested a scene of both grief and transcendent beauty. The child's eyes, rendered in delicate strokes of sorrow and hope, seemed to plead for remembrance. It was as if the mural itself had been painted by a heart burdened with centuries of regret and the desperate longing for absolution. A shiver crept up his spine as a low, resonant murmur seemed to emanate from the very walls, echoing in harmony with the rhythmic pulse of his pendant. The sound was not a conventional voice but a layered chorus of whispered memories, a medley of grief, warning, and the bittersweet promise of redemption. Jonathan pressed his hand against the cool stone, feeling as though he were absorbing the weight of every untold story etched into its surface. The stray dog, ever vigilant, regarded him with eyes that glinted with a mix of caution and encouragement, as if reminding him that even in the depths of ancient sorrow, hope had its guardians. Drawn irresistibly forward, Jonathan approached a narrow doorway veiled by a tapestry of creeping ivy. Behind this natural curtain lay a spiral staircase, its steps worn smooth by the passage of innumerable souls seeking truth or escape. With measured resolve, he descended the winding steps, each one echoing with the silent lament of lost time. The walls of the staircase bore delicate carvings that shimmered faintly in the dim light, a lexicon of symbols whose meanings blurred the line between myth and reality. They spoke of a covenant sealed in both blood and spirit, a pact that had bound the fates of the innocent and the forsaken. At the staircase's base, he emerged into a shrine-like chamber where time seemed to stand still. The air was thick with incense, an aroma both haunting and familiar, mixed with the unmistakable scent of damp earth and ancient oils. In the center of this sanctum stood an ornate pedestal, crafted with an artistry that defied modern understanding. Resting upon it was a small, intricately carved box, its surface decorated with interlocking motifs that pulsed with a soft, inner radiance. A rhythmic throb emanated from the box, reminiscent of a heartbeat echoing from the annals of antiquity. Jonathan's hand hovered momentarily before the box, his heart pounding as he summoned the courage to make contact. The stray dog, ever the silent sentinel, watched intently, its gaze conveying a timeless warning. When his fingers finally brushed the box's cool surface, a sudden cascade of light exploded around him, a burst of brilliance that momentarily obliterated the gloom. In that flash, vision surged through his mind, a montage of archaic ceremonies, spectral figures dancing beneath a blood-red moon, and fleeting images of Lily, her eyes brimming with both innocence and a profound, unspoken sorrow. As the brilliance dimmed, Jonathan found himself trembling with the force of what he had witnessed. The box now lay open, revealing within it a delicate, shimmering pendant shaped like a teardrop. Its surface was etched with the very symbols that had guided him through the labyrinth of stone and memory. In that moment, the pendant was not merely an object but a vessel of ancient power, a key to unlocking the covenant that had, for so long, woven its dark and mysterious influence over Willowbrook. A profound silence enveloped him as he clutched the pendant close, feeling its gentle warmth pulse against his chest. It was as though the relic carried a living essence, a promise of restoration, an invocation to heal the wounds of the past. The stray dog let out a soft, almost imperceptible whine, as if echoing the sentiment that this token was as much a burden as it was a blessing. The whispered voices within the chamber swelled into a single, coherent message, a call to honor the legacy of those lost, to safeguard the balance between the tangible world and the spectral echoes of ancient rites. With the pendant in hand, Jonathan retraced his steps through the now transfigured corridors. The journey back was marked by a surreal interplay of light and shadow, each passageway, once cold and foreboding, now shimmered with subtle hints of renewal. Faded inscriptions seemed to glow with renewed significance, as if the relic's presence had awakened dormant truths within the stone itself. Every step felt like a pilgrimage, an inward journey through the depths of his own resolve and the heart of a mystery that transcended the bounds of mortal life. Emerging from the shrine, he entered a vast, circular chamber where the stone floor was inlaid with an elaborate mosaic of celestial patterns. The mosaic portrayed an intricate dance of stars and planets, interwoven with scenes of sacrifice and rebirth, a cosmic narrative of existence that stretched across time and space. At the very center of the chamber, a solitary stone bench invited introspection. Jonathan paused, his thoughts heavy with the revelations of the journey thus far. In the gentle glow of his pendant, he contemplated the magnitude of the covenant he had uncovered, the legacy of a child, the enduring vigil of a stray guardian, and the ancient promise that now pulsed within him. A quiet determination settled over him as he sat upon the bench, the weight of the past mingling with the hope of the future. The soft, steady beat of the pendant was a comforting counterpoint to the silence of the chamber, a reminder that amidst the sorrow and decay, life's resilient spark endured. He realized that the secrets he sought were not confined to the dusty recesses of forgotten crypts, but were etched into the hearts of the people of Willowbrook, woven into the tapestry of their everyday lives. The relic was a bridge between these worlds, a symbol that the pain of loss and the promise of renewal were inextricably bound. Rising with renewed purpose, Jonathan stood and took a final, lingering look at the celestial mosaic. The stray dog padded up beside him, its eyes reflecting a quiet assurance that their journey was far from over. With each determined step, Jonathan ventured back into the labyrinth's depths, the gentle glow of the pendant lighting his path through corridors alive with ancient memory. The stone passages, now imbued with the energy of rediscovered lore, whispered of further mysteries and deeper truths yet to be unveiled. Every echo in the corridor, every faint murmur of the past, reinforced the realization that his quest was not just for the secrets hidden beneath Lily's grave, it was a quest to restore balance to a world teetering on the edge of forgotten sorrow and renewed hope. The path ahead promised revelations that could reshape the destiny of Willowbrook and perhaps even alter the fabric of human understanding itself. As Jonathan moved forward into the unknown, the bond between him, the spectral guardian in the form of the stray dog, and the ancient covenant grew ever stronger. The pendant pulsed softly in his hand, a constant reminder that within the darkness of despair lay the enduring possibility of light. And so, with a heart both heavy with history and buoyed by the promise of a future reborn, he pressed onward, each step a testament to the fragile beauty of truth, the timeless dance of memory and hope, and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to seek the light amid the deepest shadows. Jonathan's steps echoed through the labyrinth, his breath merging with the rhythmic pulse of the pendant against his chest. The stray dog followed closely, its watchful gaze scanning the shifting shadows that seemed to breathe along the corridor walls. The deeper they ventured, the more Jonathan sensed the weight of unseen eyes upon him, spectral presences lingering just beyond the veil of reality, waiting. The air grew thicker, damp with the scent of aged stone and something else, something metallic, like rusted iron or dried blood. Jonathan's fingers tightened around the pendant as he pushed forward, the dim glow of its ancient markings casting eerie reflections along the uneven rock. The corridor twisted, narrowing into a passage barely wide enough for him to slip through sideways. Beyond the tight passage, the space opened into a vaulted chamber, larger than anything he had encountered before. Pillars of dark stone stretched toward an unseen ceiling, their surfaces etched with symbols that shimmered like trapped lightning. The floor was layered with dust and scattered fragments of bone, as if the chamber had not been disturbed in centuries. At the room's center stood a massive stone altar, its edges adorned with long-dried rivulets of some dark substance. The pendant in Jonathan's grasp pulsed wildly now, reacting to the presence of the altar like a living thing. The stray dog let out a low growl, the sound barely more than a whisper, yet charged with a warning. Jonathan approached the altar with cautious reverence, his fingers grazing the cold, rough surface. As his touch made contact, a jolt shot through his body, visions assaulting his mind like a breaking dam. He saw robed figures gathered in solemn formation, their chants reverberating through the chamber in a language lost to time. A child stood among them, clad in ceremonial white, her face obscured by a veil of silver lace. Though her features remained hidden, Jonathan felt, that it was Lily. The robed figures lifted their hands in unison, their voices swelling into a crescendo. The walls of the chamber pulsed with an unnatural light, and the shadows seemed to writhe as if possessed. The child trembled but did not cry out. She simply stood there, waiting for what Jonathan could not yet comprehend. Then, the vision fractured, a sudden rupture in the fabric of memory. The figures dissolved, their robes scattering like ash in the wind. A scream tore through the chamber, not one of pain, but of something breaking, something primal and ancient ripping free. The light extinguished. The silence that followed was not peaceful, but suffocating. Jonathan gasped, stumbling backward as the vision released him. His chest heaved as he fought to steady his breath. The stray dog pressed against his leg, its warmth grounding him in the present. The altar before him remained unchanged, yet something beneath it called to him. A faint tremor ran through the stone, as though someone, was reaching out. Jonathan swallowed hard, his instincts screaming that he was standing on the precipice of something far greater than he could understand. And yet, he knew what he had to do. Bracing himself, he placed both hands firmly on the altar's surface and pushed. The stone groaned in protest, resisting at first, but then, with a deep, grinding moan, it shifted. Dust and debris rained down as the altar slid aside, revealing a gaping, pitch-black void beneath. A stairway, hewn from the very bones of the earth, spiraled downward into an abyss untouched by light. Jonathan hesitated only for a moment. Then, gripping the pendant tightly, he took his first step into the darkness below. The stray dog followed. Jonathan's descent into the abyss continued with an intensity that defied the ordinary, each step plunging him deeper into a realm where every breath carried the weight of millennia. The spiral staircase behind him gave way to a narrow, winding corridor bathed in an eerie, blue-green phosphorescence. The light seemed to originate not from any conventional source, but from the very walls themselves, where clusters of bioluminescent crystals flickered like distant stars in a secret sky. The passage was silent save for the soft echo of his footfalls and the measured, reassuring padding of the stray dog at his side. As he advanced, the air turned colder, denser, and filled with the faint scent of ozone and ancient damp earth. His grip on the teardrop-shaped pendant tightened, a steady, pulsing reminder of the covenant that bound him to this hidden world. With each step, the corridor seemed to stretch into eternity, its walls adorned with cryptic inscriptions and swirling patterns that hinted at lost languages and rituals forgotten by time. At intervals, the corridor opened into small alcoves where the remnants of ancient murals clung to the stone. One such alcove presented a faded depiction of robed figures gathered around a luminous child, their faces half hidden in shadow yet brimming with sorrow and silent supplication. The image stirred memories of his earlier visions, a heart-wrenching echo of Lily's spectral presence. Jonathan paused before the mural, his heart aching with both trepidation and a profound, inexplicable connection. In that quiet moment, the stray dog lifted its head, as if to signal that the past was never truly gone, but always waiting just beneath the surface. Pressing forward, Jonathan reached a junction where the corridor split in two. One path was narrow and seemed to descend further into darkness, while the other curved gently toward a soft, ambient glow. Trusting his instincts and the subtle guidance of the pendant's rhythm, he chose the descending passage. The further he went, the more the stone around him began to pulse with an almost imperceptible vibration, as if the very earth were alive with the memories of those who had traversed this route before him. After what felt like an endless journey through twisting passages, the narrow corridor opened into a vast chamber whose ceiling disappeared into impenetrable darkness. The floor was an intricate mosaic of swirling designs, a celestial map of stars, moons, and cryptic symbols that seemed to shift under his gaze. At the center of the chamber, a circular pool of water lay still and mirror-like, reflecting the faint light from above and the ancient carvings around it. The atmosphere was hushed, heavy with the sense that this was a sanctum, a place where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual were perilously thin. As Jonathan stepped toward the pool, the pendant's glow grew warmer, bathing his face in a gentle radiance that contrasted sharply with the surrounding cold. The stray dog circled the perimeter of the pool, its eyes never leaving the reflective surface as if it sensed something hidden beneath. Then, in the tranquil silence, the surface of the water began to ripple. Slowly at first, then with growing urgency, it undulated as if stirred by an unseen force. Shapes emerged from the depths, fleeting images of a small girl with sorrowful eyes, echoing Lily's gentle face, and shadowy figures that appeared to beckon him closer. A surge of both dread and yearning rushed through Jonathan. Every instinct screamed at him to flee from this haunted echo of the past, yet an irresistible compulsion drove him to understand what lay beneath the surface. With deliberate care, he knelt at the edge of the pool and reached out to touch the water. His fingers met a cool, almost electric current that sent shivers up his spine and sparked a cascade of images in his mind, ancient rituals performed under blood-red moons, solemn oaths sealed in darkness, and the intertwined destinies of a lost child and a guardian spirit, a stray dog that had borne silent witness to centuries of sorrow and hope. The water stilled as if satisfied with the offering of his touch, and from its center, a delicate, luminescent orb began to rise. It floated upward, suspended in the air like a fragile seed of light, and its radiance grew until it illuminated the chamber with a soft, otherworldly glow. The orb pulsed in time with Jonathan's heartbeat, its light intensifying for a moment before softening to a steady luminescence. In that glow, the mosaic on the floor appeared to shift and change, revealing new symbols and hidden messages that hinted at a covenant older than the stones themselves. Overwhelmed by the merging of wonder and foreboding, Jonathan carefully withdrew his hand from the water. He sensed that the orb was a sign, a key to unlocking the deeper mysteries that lay buried in these hidden depths. The stray dog, its eyes reflecting the orb's gentle light, seemed to urge him onward. It was as if the creature understood that this realm was not merely a crypt of forgotten relics, but a living chronicle of a destiny that had been waiting to be fulfilled. Rising slowly, Jonathan clutched the pendant close to his chest, its steady beat now harmonizing with the silent rhythm of the chamber. The orb drifted upward and paused just above the water's surface, casting ethereal patterns on the walls that danced with the shadows. In that sacred silence, the ancient covenant whispered its secrets of promises made in the darkness, of lives intertwined with sorrow and redemption, and of a truth that transcended the boundaries of time. With a deep, steadying breath, Jonathan knew that this was only another turning point in his perilous journey, a journey that had begun with the simple mystery of a stray dog's unwavering vigil at a child's grave and had evolved into an odyssey through the very heart of ancient memory. The orb's quiet radiance and the echo of the past beckoned him further still, urging him to press on into the unknown depths of Willowbrook's long-hidden legacy. And so, with the stray dog at his side and the pulsating pendant lighting his path, Jonathan stepped away from the pool and toward the next corridor, a passage shrouded in darkness and promise. Every heartbeat, every flicker of light on the stone walls, carried with it the undeniable truth that the secrets of this underground realm were as boundless as they were profound. With unwavering resolve, he advanced, prepared to confront whatever lay ahead and to uncover the full tapestry of the ancient covenant that bound his fate to the spectral memories of a lost child and the silent guardian who had led him thus far. Jonathan pressed deeper into the labyrinth, each step laden with the weight of unspoken memories and the silent promise of revelations yet to come. The narrow passageway, its walls etched with enigmatic symbols and time-worn inscriptions, seemed to breathe around him, a slow, rhythmic exhalation that carried echoes of ancient chants and long-forgotten rituals. The stray dog led faithfully at his side, its luminous eyes fixed ahead as if it alone could decipher the secrets hidden in the shadows. The corridor eventually opened into a vast, vaulted chamber whose ceiling vanished into impenetrable darkness. Here, the stone floor was adorned with a sprawling mosaic, a celestial tapestry of interlocking stars, swirling galaxies, and cryptic sigils. Every tile in the mosaic pulsed in gentle cadence with the soft glow of his pendant and the locket now safely nestled against his heart. It was as though the very floor beneath him held the cosmic memory of an age when destinies were written in the language of light and shadow. At the center of the chamber, a monumental stone dais commanded attention. Its surface was a palimpsest of faded carvings and symbols that resonated with a spectral energy. As Jonathan approached, the air around him seemed to still, and the distant murmur of voices, like whispers carried on the breath of time, grew clearer. In that quiet, hallowed space, the mural of his past journey converged with the promise of the future. The images on the dais danced before his eyes, spectral figures in ancient robes, a child whose sorrowful gaze mirrored lilies, and mysterious constellations that twinkled with both hope and warning. Drawn by an inexorable pull, Jonathan stepped onto the dais. The moment his foot met the cold stone, a shudder ran through the chamber. The mosaic beneath him brightened, its intricate patterns shifting as if unlocking a hidden message. In that luminous instant, the voices coalesced into a single, haunting refrain, a litany of promises, regrets, and the eternal covenant between those who had been lost and the forces that had bound them. Images flooded his mind, ceremonies held under blood-red skies, clandestine gatherings of mystics beneath the watchful eyes of ancient deities, and the tender, tragic visage of Lily amid a sea of grieving souls. The visions were as vivid as they were overwhelming, each one a fragment of a puzzle that spanned millennia. Jonathan felt the pulse of the universe in sync with his own heartbeat, a rhythmic affirmation that the secrets of this hidden realm were inextricably linked to his destiny. In that suspended moment, he recalled the soft murmur of the stray dog's presence, a steadfast reminder that he was not alone on this pilgrimage. The creature's gentle nudge against his leg was both comfort and command, urging him to acknowledge the past while forging ahead into the unknown. With a deep, steadying breath, Jonathan reached into his pocket and retrieved the locket. Holding it aloft, he watched as its silver surface caught the shifting light, reflecting images of faces and places that seemed almost otherworldly. In that gleam, he perceived not only the sorrow of loss but the promise of renewal, a fragile spark capable of mending the fractures of time. Slowly, the voices receded, replaced by a palpable stillness that enveloped the chamber like a sacred shroud. The mosaic's glow softened, guiding his gaze to a narrow passage emerging from behind the dais. Its opening was framed by arching columns carved with the same cryptic symbols that now adorned his memories. The passage beckoned him forward, promising further revelations and the answers that had haunted his every step since the first mysterious appearance of the stray dog at Lily's grave. With the locket close to his heart and the pendant's rhythmic pulse steadying his resolve, Jonathan stepped off the dais and into the corridor beyond. The walls here were alive with shifting shadows, each twist and turn a silent verse in the epic poem of the ancient covenant. The passage led him upward and then down into another hidden sanctum, a room where the air vibrated with the energy of incantations and whispered oaths. Here, amid scattered relics and half-erased murals, lay a series of stone tablets arranged in a deliberate, circular pattern. Each tablet bore inscriptions in a language that defied the ordinary, their letters aglow with a spectral light that seemed to pulse in time with the heartbeat of the earth itself. Jonathan knelt before the tablets, his fingertips tracing the ancient script with both reverence and urgency. The inscriptions told a story of sacrifice and redemption, a covenant forged between mortal souls and the eternal forces that governed fate. They recounted how, in an age shrouded by mystery, a promise was made to safeguard the light of innocence against the encroaching darkness. A promise that now, through the memory of a lost child and the silent guardianship of a stray spirit, sought its fulfillment in his own time. A gentle hum began to resonate from the tablets, a low vibration that permeated the chamber and seeped into Jonathan's very bones. It was as though the relics were awakening, urging him to recite an incantation written not in words, but in the language of the heart. With a trembling voice, he murmured fragments of the ancient lore he had pieced together from the myriad relics and symbols encountered along his journey. In that fragile moment, the air seemed to shimmer, and the tablets glowed with renewed intensity, as if affirming his solemn vow. Outside the chamber, the distant echoes of Willowbrook's quiet, unsuspecting existence felt like a distant memory, a world apart from the timeless realm he now inhabited. The stray dog, ever the silent guardian, settled at his feet, its eyes filled with an understanding that transcended language. Together, man and creature formed a quiet covenant of their own, a pledge to seek the truth hidden within the tapestry of sorrow and hope, to bridge the chasm between the forgotten past and the fragile present. With the glow of the tablets as his guide and the resonant hum of ancient promises echoing in his ears, Jonathan rose slowly to his feet. The path ahead was uncertain, shrouded in darkness and fraught with peril, yet he felt an undeniable pull toward the next unfolding chapter of this enigmatic odyssey. Every step, every whispered secret, was a thread in the vast tapestry of the ancient covenant, the tapestry that now beckoned him to restore the balance between despair and the enduring light of remembrance. And so, with his resolve steeled by the weight of ancient memories and the quiet assurance of a loyal guardian by his side, Jonathan advanced into the next corridor of mystery. The relics he carried, the pendant and the locket, were not mere tokens of the past, but keys to unlocking a destiny interwoven with the very fabric of the cosmos. Each shadow that danced along the stone walls, each murmur in the silence, spoke of a truth waiting to be unveiled, a truth that would forever alter the fate of Willowbrook and the legacy of a child whose spirit endured beyond the confines of mortal sorrow. In that moment, as he stepped further into the abyss of secrets and silent promises, Jonathan knew that his journey was far from over. The ancient covenant whispered of deeper enigmas and darker sacrifices, and with each heartbeat, the legacy of the lost and the promise of renewal intertwined, guiding him ever onward into the depths of the unknown. Jonathan stepped gingerly into the final chamber, a vast, circular sanctum where time itself appeared to pause. The chamber's walls, carved with the very language of ancient oaths, pulsed with a slow, measured light that seemed to breathe life into the inscriptions. At the center, upon a raised dais of intricately veined stone, lay a colossal mosaic depicting a timeless cycle, scenes of sorrow, of luminous hope, and of a child whose tender, serene face radiated both joy and melancholy. It was unmistakably the visage of Lily, now rendered as a symbol of purity reclaimed from the shadows of forgotten pain. The stray dog, its eyes gleaming like twin beacons of unwavering devotion, circled the dais. With every step, it seemed to merge with the ambient glow, its form shifting subtly, a guardian spirit poised on the threshold between worlds. Jonathan's heart pounded in unison with the rhythmic pulse of the teardrop-shaped pendant and the silver locket that rested against his chest. These relics, far more than mere tokens, were keys to an ancient covenant now ready to be unraveled. He knelt before the mosaic, letting his gaze absorb every minute detail of the story it told. The panels depicted long-lost ceremonies where robed figures raised their voices in sacred incantations beneath a blood-red sky, their chants echoing with promises to protect innocence against the creeping darkness. Amid these solemn rites, a recurring motif shone through: the tender, unyielding presence of a child, whose spirit seemed to be both the focal point of grief and the spark of redemption. A profound stillness descended upon the chamber. The walls shimmered with ethereal light as if stirred by a breath from the beyond, and soft whispers, a symphony of voices from eras long past, filled the air. In that sacred moment, Jonathan sensed that every sorrow, every whispered lament, was converging here, waiting for the final act of this ancient ritual. The mosaic's light intensified gradually, each luminescent tile pulsing in harmony with his heartbeat. Summoning every ounce of resolve, Jonathan raised the locket and the pendant, their combined glow casting dancing reflections upon the stone floor. He began to recite the incantation he had pieced together from the scattered relics and murmured legends, words that transcended the limits of mortal language. With each syllable, the chamber vibrated as if in response, the ancient covenant stirred awake, its dormant power uncoiling like a serpent from a timeless sleep. As his voice grew steadier, the symbols on the walls blazed with a newfound brilliance. The mosaic shifted before his eyes, revealing hidden layers of meaning, images of spectral figures ascending towards a boundless sky, of lost souls being gently cradled by a luminous force. A cascade of memories washed over him, visions of Lily, no longer shrouded in sorrow but radiant with the hope of liberation, smiling as she soared free from the bonds of mortal anguish. In that rapturous moment, the veil between the living and the spectral world thinned to a gossamer transparency. The stray dog paused at his side, its form softening into that of a radiant guardian, a silent testament to the ancient promise now fulfilled. With a final, resonant intonation, Jonathan's incantation reached its crescendo. The air trembled, the very foundation of the chamber quaked as light and shadow swirled into a vortex of transcendent energy. In that climactic surge, the ancient covenant was consummated, a sacred bond restored, the lost and the living united in a single, eternal moment. Slowly, the overwhelming radiance receded, leaving behind an afterglow that suffused the chamber with a sense of profound peace. The spectral figures faded into gentle silhouettes, and Lily's image, etched forever into the mosaic, shone with a comforting luminescence, a reminder that even in loss there is the promise of renewal. The inscriptions on the wall settled into a quiet murmur, as if whispering a benediction to the brave soul who had dared to traverse the depths of time. Jonathan felt an indescribable lightness, as if a great burden had been lifted from both the ancient stones and his own heart. He understood now that the covenant was not a curse, but a legacy, a sacred trust to honor the memory of the lost and to guard the fragile balance between light and darkness. The locket and pendant, still warm in his grasp, pulsed with a gentle assurance that their story, and the story of Willowbrook, was now forever transformed. Rising from the dais, Jonathan followed the guiding glow of the stray guardian as it led him back through the labyrinthine corridors. The oppressive gloom yielded to a delicate brightness that seemed to emanate from the very walls, guiding him gently toward the surface. With each step upward, he carried with him the weight of ancient wisdom and a renewed sense of purpose. The hidden legacy beneath Lily's grave had not only revealed long-buried secrets, but had also kindled the promise of hope, a promise that the scars of the past could, in time, be healed. At last, Jonathan emerged into the cool embrace of dawn. The familiar streets of Willowbrook, bathed in the soft light of a new day, welcomed him back with a quiet serenity that belied the tumultuous odyssey he had endured. Though the mysteries of the underground realm would forever linger in his memory, he now bore the sacred responsibility of nurturing that delicate balance between sorrow and hope, between the seen and the unseen. In the tender glow of the rising sun, as the stray guardian vanished like a wisp of remembered dreams, Jonathan paused to take a deep, steadying breath. The echoes of ancient vows and the whispered laughter of a once-lost child reverberated softly within him, a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, there exists the possibility of light, and that the memory of the innocent can guide us toward a future reborn. Thus, with the legacy of the covenant etched into his soul and the mysteries of the past forever intertwined with his destiny, Jonathan stepped forward into a new day, a day imbued with the bittersweet beauty of remembrance, the eternal promise of renewal, and the enduring truth that the bonds between the living and the lost are never truly severed.